great. So the apartment's sweet.
So, you ready to review some of your films?
Did you f***ing just say something?
Yeah, I did. Your movies. It's amazing you keep making them.
Why wouldn't I stick around for entertainment like that, huh?
Well, to be honest, most of your movies are kind of the same.
Please, I haven't got time for this.
Sorry, Statham, but this is why we're here. We have to review your films.
This is weird.
No, this is movie night. Hello and welcome to Movie Night. I'm your host, Jonathan Paula. Tonight we'll finish up our 6-week installment of Action Movie Month, albeit a bit later than originally planned. Tonight we'll focus on one of Hollywood's favorite anti-heroes, Jason Statham, who wasn't really featured in his own films until the early 2000s. His affinity for performing his own stunts has made him a popular mainstay since, so tonight we'll review 5 of his pictures, beginning with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. This breakout hit that brought director Guy Ritchie international acclaim made over $28 million at the box office following its August 28, 1998 release in the UK. The low-budget comedy crime thriller follows a group of 4 friends who get mixed up in a bizarre series of events involving gangsters, loan sharks, drug dealers, and antique shotguns. Jason Fleming, Dexter Fletcher, Nick Moran, and Jason Statham make up the core group of protagonists, but dozens of other familiar English actors pop in and out of the script during its 106-minute runtime. All of them do a great job with the believable but totally ridiculous plot, including Statham in his film debut. The unconventional story plays out like a gritty British version of Seinfeld, with a series of crazy coincidences and mix-ups propelling the narrative from scene to scene. This unique style is both the film's strongest element and its weakest, as it sometimes gets a bit too convoluted for its own good. Also, most of the actual action sequences are quick fights or shootouts, largely included to forward the plot, rather than to provide thrills themselves.
Oh, and if Tom, or anyone else for that matter, feels like giving them a bit of a kicking, I'm sure it won't do any harm.
Yeah, a little bit of pain never hurt anybody, if you know what I mean. Also, I think knives are a good idea. Big, fuck-off shiny ones. Ones that look like they could skin a crocodile. Makes it look like we're serious. Guns for show, knives for a pro.
So, is there something we should know about you?
I'm not sure what's more worrying. The job or your past.
Besides being presented with fast-moving, heavily stylized cinematography, the R-rated film also has a wicked sense of humor to it, which helps keep things light and playful despite the bloody action and the movie's 125 uses of the F-word. When Fletcher questions whether their enemies are armed, Moran humorously retorts, colorful language, feather duster? What do you think they're going to be armed with? Guns, you tit. Indeed, the movie's best moments are unexpected surprises, like when our 4 bumbling criminals accidentally discover a kidnapped traffic warden in the back of a van they stole. The occasional use of Britpop and rock music makes this a fun and lively picture even during the most violent moments. Repeated viewings are almost required for a film this complex, as it's near impossible to pick up all the nuanced elements, jokes, and setups the first time through. When it's all over, you'll be left with a smile on your face, even if everything that preceded the quirky climax really never had a point. An inventive, quotable, and damn entertaining adventure, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is an outrageously interesting British crime movie. Now let's see what you had to say in the YouTube comments. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels on the Rate-O-Matic, a 9 and an 8. Expertly blending comedy and crime elements into a very enjoyable experience, you scored this an awesome. For me, it was a very fun picture, but it also seemed a bit juvenile and silly too, so I'll score it a great. Our second review tonight is for The Transporter. The first in an eventual trilogy that also spawned a 12-episode TV series, this French action thriller was a surprise hit following its October 2002 release, more than doubling its $21 million budget. Co-directors Louis Leterrier and Hong Kong choreography specialist Corey Young do a great job bringing the fast and flashy 92-minute picture together. Jason Statham is featured in his first starring role as a professional courier for criminals who gets more than he bargained for after transporting a living hostage, played by the adorably annoying Ki Shu. Although the acting is less than convincing, the two leads share enough romantic chemistry and charisma that it's easy to overlook their performance shortcomings. Obeying a strict set of self-imposed rules, Statham takes pride in his work, explaining transportation is a precise business. A thrilling high-speed chase through seaside France kicks off the PG-13 rated film, and is one of the more memorable cold opens for the genre. Backed by some funky-sounding music by Stanley Clarke, the fight sequences are inventive and exciting to watch unfold, especially since Statham commendably performs all of his own stunts. One particularly fantastic scene sees him taking on 8 bad guys at once while covered in motor oil. Occasionally though, the fights feel like they're happening in slow motion and appear too rehearsed. The movie constantly skirts the fringes of believability, however, not the least of which is miraculously landing a car on a transport vehicle and hitching a ride without its driver ever noticing. The remainder of the set pieces are relatively low-key and contained, but work very well within the limited narrative. With not much below the surface, bland villains, unrealistic action, and a simplistic plot, the movie still maintains its appeal with well-executed martial arts, some big explosions, and fast-moving chase sequences. Hardly an award-winning film, it's still plenty rewatchable, as are its equally amusing sequels. The Transporter. Quick fights distract from story. Here are some of your thoughts now from the YouTube comments. Our scores for The Transporter, a 7 and a 7. Plenty of praise for this picture, with most of it going to Statham and the fight choreography, but we're both aware of the film's limitations and faults, scoring it a cool. Now for tonight's poll question, what is your favorite Jason Statham film? Leave your response as a comment below. Our third review tonight is for Crank. Written and directed by Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor, this 93-minute action film nearly quadrupled its $12 million budget following its September 1st release in 2006. Jason Statham stars as a Los Angeles-based hitman and criminal who becomes poisoned by a former rival and must constantly keep his adrenaline flowing to stay alive. The extremely unique and inventive concept is practically impossible to believe, which is fortunate as the R-rated thriller approaches the situation with tongue firmly planted in cheek. Performing all of his own fight and car stunts himself, Statham is wonderful as the anti-hero, somehow keeping the nonsense around him always fun. He balances the humor with a menacing attitude, taking down bad guys while complaining about his absurd predicament. Maintaining a mad sprint to keep his blood pumping, his attractive but often confused girlfriend Amy Smart labels him as an adrenaline junkie with no soul. This line is immediately before the two engage in sexual intercourse right in the middle of a crowded marketplace. It's silly and entertaining, but somehow this comedic highlight actually makes sense within the bizarre narrative. Country singer Dwight Yoakam is featured as the mature voice of reason, helping Statham deal with his predicament, while Jose Pablo Cantillo is a vengeful criminal hell-bent on seeing Jason die.
If I'm right, they gave you the Beijing cocktail.
Very nasty shit. Works in the adrenal gland, blocks its receptors. The only thing you can do to slow it down at all is to keep the flow of adrenaline constant.
Meaning, if you stop, you die.
Hang on!
Jesus, what? Are you there? Are you okay? What?
Did you say, Doc?
If you stop, you die.
The events fly by with a wicked pace, and necessarily so, making this an easy film to get lost in. Especially a delightful scene where Statham tempts death by standing on a motorcycle while the ironic sounds of Harry Nilsson's Everybody's Talkin' echoes in the background. Edited with a quirky, visceral style, the entire feature plays out like a music video. Couple that with the oversaturated visuals, and this feels like a low-budget indie film at times, despite its 8-figure budget. Besides the gimmicky plot itself, there's also several allusions to video games, which is exactly what this experience feels like. One notable downside, however, are the villains, who aren't particularly memorable or even interesting. Statham's primary adversary is really time itself. The loud punk rock score from Paul Hasingler is a perfect backdrop to the amped-up proceedings. The action in this picture is actually well done, and since it never takes itself seriously, is often funnier than it needs to be, which led to an even crazier but less original sequel. Wrapping up with a non-traditional but nonetheless satisfying ending, this is a great lighthearted adventure I could watch again and again, especially if you have some friends over to laugh with you. Crank, ridiculous extravaganza with flashy style. Here are some of your thoughts now from the YouTube comments. A 6 and a 7 for Crank. You enjoyed the humor and action, but little else, rating this a good. As far as shallow, unrealistic popcorn films go, this one is pretty special, but it's also not terribly impressive either. I thought it was cool. Next up tonight is Parker. Released the last week of January in 2013, this American crime thriller from director Taylor Hackford managed to earn a modest profit of $11 million over its $35 million budget. The story, adapted from the novel Flashfire, the 19th installment in author Donald Westlake's long-running book series, follows the title character on a mission of revenge by hijacking a big heist from his old crew. The ripped, wisecracking Englishman Jason Statham stars in this 118-minute action caper that mostly plays out like a made-for-TV movie with few surprises. The cool and skilled martial artist also has a streak of humor to his actions, threatening a witness with a bar stool by saying, "Plus there's the posthumous humiliation of having been killed by a chair." He may be a criminal, but he maintains ethical standards that'll have you sympathizing with his situation. Alongside him as the sexy sidekick is Jennifer Lopez, who filmed her role in between judging responsibilities on American Idol. Ever since her debut in 1995's Selena, I've been decently impressed with her acting ability, and her peppy portrayal of a gorgeous, perpetually horny, fledgling real estate agent turned criminal accomplice is one of the more memorable aspects of this R-rated film. Michael Chiklis, Clifton Collins Jr., Wendell Pierce, and Nick Nolte all have supporting roles as well, but I'd be lying if I said any of them contributed much. A cold open sequence involving a small-level robbery at a local fair isn't particularly clever or interesting, and exists only to service the plot, which is indeed a metaphor for most of this picture's action sequences, which seem to take a backseat to the dull story for the middle 60 minutes. The visuals here are captured cleanly if conventionally, but including 3D in-world text to signify locations is entirely unnecessary and just feels like a gimmick. Speaking of gimmicks, Jason's poor attempt at a Texan accent for a few key scenes is more distracting than it is believable, but I suppose that's sort of the point. The seemingly immortal Statham is fun to watch punch and kick his way out of every situation, especially a gruesome and bloody fight scene that caps off the drama, but there's never any tension either. A fairly generic, slow-moving picture with little rewatch value or lasting impact, it still has a few shining moments of entertainment that could be worth checking out. Parker. Interesting characters despite dull narrative. As a recent film that didn't perform very well, I'm not surprised I'm rating this one alone. I'll score it a 5. A perfectly average movie that is made watchable by its two leads and little else. I thought it was alright. A quick reminder now to check out the Movie Night Archive channel for my trailer commentaries and a full list of all 373 reviews I've done on the show. Last up tonight, let's review Homefront. This Gary Felder action thriller just about doubled its $22 million budget after its November 27, 2013 release. Former DEA agent Jason Statham moves his family to a sleepy Louisiana town where he's forced to deal with his past, and a local meth dealer, which has the school teacher astutely warning, you can go from 2 kids in a fistfight to the emergency room real fast. The story is based on Chuck Logan's novel of the same name and was adapted into a screenplay by none other than Sylvester Stallone, who does a great job with the realistic dialogue and characters. After a violent drug bust prologue opens the film with the ass-kicking leading man sporting a bizarrely unfortunate mullet-like hairdo, the film settles in and begins developing the talented cast. Statham is right at home showcasing his impressive fighting skills, but also does a commendable job balancing the quieter dramatic elements of the script as well, portraying a man attempting to avoid trouble and just live his life.
Whatever you're thinking, rethink it.
Rethink it. He wants me to rethink it. You ain't turning that back on. Good. Up. Why don't we step around the side of the building so I can kick your f***ing ass up over your shoulders.
James Franco is featured as a primary antagonist, a cunning drug dealer who finds himself in over his head, but willing to make the hard choices. The young Isabella Vidovic does a marvelous job as the courageous little girl who gets stuck in the middle of all the violence. Kate Bosworth, Winona Ryder, Clancy Brown, and Omar Benson Miller round out the rest of the cast with much smaller but critical contributions to the 100-minute story. As tensions smolder just below the surface, the R-rated adventure stays exciting with plenty of great fistfights and takedowns, with Statham quickly and even amusingly dispatching his victims with ease. Especially one scene where he escapes torture to fend off 3 bad guys with both of his arms literally tied behind his back. Besides having an affinity for whiz pans and unnecessary camera movement, director Fletter also utilizes a bit too much foreground clutter in the anamorphic frame. That said, the overall visual style is positively beautiful, with every shot framed by the stunning and meticulously well-shot landscapes of the Deep South. There are also some stylized editing choices like gradual video L cuts that give the film a slight artistic touch. Mark Isham's melodic score features plenty of low-key acoustic guitar sounds and remains appropriately subdued throughout. Dealing with themes of portrayal and sticking up for yourself, there are some worthwhile lessons to be derived from this otherwise formulaic movie. Nothing groundbreaking here, but an enjoyable picture I wouldn't mind watching again in a few years. Homefront has palatable thrills in familiar package. Here's what you had to say in the YouTube comments. Our ratings for Homefront: 2 6s. You liked some elements but felt the lack of action weakened this picture. You scored it a good. Although nothing about the story was truly exciting, the people involved and the execution made it interesting enough for me to also give this a good. And with that, Action Movie Month comes to a close. But I have a feeling we'll be revisiting it again sometime in the future. And who knows, maybe we'll do some other themed months in the years ahead. Finally tonight, let's take a look at films currently playing in theaters with some of your tweet critiques. If you see a new movie in theaters, tweet your review at the JPMN hashtag. Next week we'll be reviewing 3 recent high-profile spring releases: Divergent, Captain America the Winter Soldier, and Draft Day, all of which are now playing in theaters. Once you've seen these films, share your opinions by voting in the polls below or by leaving a comment review. If you'd like to watch more Movie Night, check out the related reviews on the right or click subscribe to be notified of all new content. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or Google Plus for updates between episodes. Once again, my name is Jonathan Paula. Thank you for watching and listening. Until next time, have a good movie night.